Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome, everybody. Season 4, episode 33 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host for today, Nick Cap. Unfortunately, Nick G unable to be with us today for the episode, but we're going to hold down the fort in the meantime, get through all your Sunday games. We'll break it down a little bit of Monday Night Football for you guys, and we'll get through your questions, of course, as always. But first, before we get into your questions, we do need to spend some time doing some shameless little plugs. So thank you guys for joining us. We are the PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at PrimeTimeFFPod. You can listen to our Tuesday and our Thursday shows on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are live every single Sunday for those of you that are up bright and early right here on YouTube. You can also follow the show on Facebook as well. YouTube is our preferred destination. We do get to pull up the questions like some of our guys, our regulars, our Joes, our Deshaun. What's up? Happy Sunday. Let's go, boys. We're running the table today. We're running the gauntlet. So definitely make sure you get over to the YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. You guys know what to do. Hit the notification bell. Easier to tune into the shows every Sunday morning. All right. So while we wait for some questions to kind of filter in, let's get into some of the game breakdown. We'll go right through the schedule. This is a very important week for football. There's a lot of division matchups, a lot of those fun games. So we'll get through that for sure today. There's a lot of high over-unders. So they're projecting a huge fantasy football week. We got a great matchup on Thursday, a lot of big fantasy performances there. So we'll get into it real quick. We got one from Deshaun. Lost Godwin and Ayuk, pick 2 to start. Calvin Ridley, who's going up against the Lions. Jacoby Myers, he's been out a few weeks, but he's going up against Kansas City. Shepard with the Buccaneers. Keenan Allen up against Washington. And Xavier Worthy up against the Raiders. I would go, the first one I want to lock in is Keenan Allen. He's looked really, really good the last couple weeks with Caleb Williams coming off the bye. Washington has been one of the worst defenses against the wide receiver position. So Keenan Allen, to me, is the best play. And then you're kind of shooting a shot. Calvin Ridley, not a great matchup against Detroit, but Detroit's corners could be better. The quarterback play obviously needs to be better for Ridley to succeed. Myers would be getting shadowed all game by Trent McDuffie. Don't love that matchup. Xavier Worthy could probably burn off the top one of your guys. So if I would definitely lock in Keenan Allen, and then you're waiting for the 4:00 games. Maybe see how the 1:00s go. If you need the safe floor, go Myers. If you need the league winner, the game winner, I'd go with Xavier Worthy. Kirk Cousins or CJ Stroud from our guy Scott. I actually have CJ Stroud on my all boom team, so let me give you some of my quick notes for him. I would definitely roll out Stroud. Both these guys have great matchups. But Stroud is coming off the worst game of his career. He played horrible last week when he went up north. But when I did some of my research, he's actually a very poor road quarterback. When he's on the road, he's averaging 214 yards per game and a touchdown on 63% completion. That's not horrible stats for football. Passing yards a little low, touchdowns not too high. But when he's at home, and they are home this weekend in this division matchup, he's averaging 311 yards per game, 2 touchdowns, and 74% completion. So definitely a lot better for your fantasy football lineups. We also saw him in week 1 get this matchup, and he was a top 10 quarterback that week. So I would definitely like to lean on CJ Stroud in this one. Kirk Cousins did have the huge game a couple weeks back against the Buccaneers on that Thursday night football game, 500 yards. I don't think he's going to be that good. I still think he will be good, but I do think that they're going to be able to run the ball a lot more in that matchup with no receivers over there for Tampa Bay. So they should get out to an early lead and kind of be able to maintain it. Morning from fellow Cap. I'm Nick Cap. Morning for Cap. Good morning, beautiful people. McMillan or Tank Dell? That's a great question. I like Jalen McMillan on the week for sure, but Tank Dell has kind of been proven to be really good without Nico Collins. The Packers secondary has been really, really solid since Jair Alexander got back there. So last week you saw a bit of the struggles, but we did watch CJ Stroud absolutely torch the Colts. The first time they played in week one, where he was a top 10 quarterback, we watched Nico Collins have a big game. And we watched Stephon Diggs have a big game. I would go with Tank Dell. Stroud also averages 294 yards per game and 2 touchdowns against the Colts. So if Tank Dell is the wide receiver 1 or 1B over there with Diggs, I like the Tank Dell safety a little bit better. Any reason to be concerned with Tank Dell? Zero. No, I think that CJ Stroud just had a really bad game. He's had 2 bad games this year. Last week on the show, I thought that they were going to get blown out in this matchup. As it turns out, they didn't, but it's because their defense really kept them in it, and Joe Mixon had a big game. The reason why is Stroud, when he traveled up north earlier this year against the Minnesota Vikings, played really poorly. That was the second worst game of the year. He does not travel well. I read you some of the stats about it. So maybe on the road, a little bit of concern. And when Nico gets back, definitely concern. But for right now, I like him in the home matchup. I like him up against the Colts defense, who's not very good. From Deshaun, half PPR, Sam Laporta, or Tucker Kraft. Let's get into it a little bit. I believe that the Packers, the Jags are actually solid against the tight end position. Let me check. Sorry, it's kind of hard when it's just a solo show. You got to pull up all the notes and analyze. It's a big responsibility over here. So the Jags are kind of middle of the pack against the tight end position. And Sam Laporta, I know Nick has Sam Laporta on the all bust team. But personally, I like the upside of Sam Laporta more weeks than Tucker Kraft. I think there's too many weapons on Green Bay for Tucker Kraft to constantly succeed. I think you could go either way in this one. I'd probably go with Laporta and just go with your top guy in a matchup against the NFC. Against the AFC, where they're not really used to going up against those elite tight ends. The AFC tight ends outside of Andrews, who's been inconsistent at best this year, Travis Kelce doesn't really have a lot of top talent. The NFC kind of is a little bit better in that regard. Scott Green, 1 flex, Bucky Irving, Michael Pittman, Rashad Bateman, Kyle Pitts. So Bucky Irving hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Rachaad White did play last week, and he had a pretty huge game, actually. Let's see. In week 7, Rachaad White was the RB2 on the week, 29.1 points. Kind of went under the radar, I'll be honest, between our show and a lot of other fantasy shows. I like Bucky Irving over the course of the year, but that definitely scares me a little bit. Michael Pittman, I don't believe Will Levis is playing this week, which is upside for him. And they will have the game script for Pittman to get Pittman. What am I saying? Pittman playing for the Colts, obviously. I don't love the Anthony Richardson play. Rashad Bateman's been a lot more consistent than I've thought this year. Let's take a look for you guys. I remember I saw him on my waiver wires last week, and I was like, why is he near the top of the transactions? And then I realized he's been solid. So the last 5 weeks, 11.8, 3.3, 15.8, 11.1, 22.1. So last 3 games averaging over 15 points per game. I think you could probably throw out Rashad Bateman if you're going to pick one of the guys. I don't know if he definitely doesn't have the highest upside of the group. That would be Pittman. But I do think that seeing a little bit more consistency for 3 straight games, you probably want to roll him out there. Tillman or Shakir in my flex. I would not play Shakir this week if you have a pivot. Shakir is more of a slot receiver. Amari Cooper last week only played 36% of snaps. He's definitely going to get more of that workload as he gets more into this offense, and that's purely going to cut into Shakir's workload. It will wind up being Matt Collins and Keon Coleman on the outside, and then you'll see Amari Cooper in the slot a lot more. They will have some sets with the two of them, but I'm going to guess Shakir's snap share is going to take a big dive this week as compared to the last few. 16-man league, tough running back week. Charbonnet, Justice Hill, Ezekiel Elliott, and Roschon Johnson. I would get rid of Zeke. I do not want to play that 49ers front seven if I'm a Dallas Cowboy. They are horrible in that spot. Justice Hill, not another great one. Zach Charbonnet. Yeah, this is a tough one, Deshaun. If I were to pick one, I'd probably go Roschon. He's been the goal line back for this team. He has scored a ton of touchdowns, considering he's been solid. He hasn't really been great in the few games that he has played. It is past the bye week, so maybe they do look to him a little bit more in the running game rather than just go all in on DeAndre Swift. So I would be comfortable, or I'd be more comfortable, I should say, playing Roschon and hoping for the touchdown than any of these guys who I don't think have the guaranteed workload. They don't have the guaranteed time on the field, and none of them really have guaranteed touches. So I trust the touchdown upside of Roschon over the other guys. From John Colwell, Malik Neighbors or George Pickens, full PPR. So that's the Monday Night Football matchup. I would go with Neighbors. I still don't love George Pickens. I think Russ did not play nearly as well as people thought. I was watching the entire game, obviously, as a Jets fan last week. Pickens made a couple circus catches, which, yes, is good for football, but it's not sustainable. And Malik Neighbors has gotten so much guaranteed workload every single game. I don't think there's any reason to bench Malik Neighbors if he's out there in your matchups. We know that Daniel Jones is going to remind us why he shouldn't have been paid that contract every other week. He pretty much does it. So we'll take a shot on Daniel Jones in this one and Malik Neighbors. I do think Daniel Jones could get benched. This might be the last start of his NFL career, or at least his career as a New York Giant. So another thing to watch out for. From Shades, standard scoring, need 3, J.K. Dobbins, George Mason, and Gibbs. Also Purdy, Caleb Williams, the shoot. So I assume you need one quarterback. Oh, Jonathan Taylor, Dobbins, Mason, Gibbs. Got it. Okay. So I will go with, I definitely want Jordan Mason in this one. The rushing upside against Dallas is going to be huge. The rushing yards can be huge. Jahmyr Gibbs definitely want after that huge week. I know the matchup might be a little bit scary going up against the Tennessee Titans team who's top 5 against the run. Well, so with Minnesota Vikings, and last week Jahmyr Gibbs was the RB1 on the week. So I'm not too concerned there. So then the question is Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins going up against New Orleans, a team that's horrible against the running back position. And Jonathan Taylor, I believe, is on Nick's all-bust team going up against the Houston Texans, a pretty solid team against the run. So even though Nick's not here, I will ride with him on this one. I would go with J.K. Dobbins in that matchup over Jonathan Taylor in his. Start 1, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Pittman, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Tolbert, or Ricky Pearsall. So I do have McMillan on my all-boom team. I would probably roll out with him. And it's quite simply because there's a lot of targets that need to go around. And we did see this game be a very huge, high-scoring one last year, or a couple weeks ago. So I would like the McMillan matchup. Last week, he did get 8 targets after Mike Evans got hurt. So it didn't translate to fantasy in that game, but I really like the opportunity. Also, the last time that Baker played this team, he had 3 touchdowns in the game, and he was averaging 266 yards per game on the season. So pretty big upside in that spot. From Stanley, 12-team league, should I play Kittle or Ferguson? Definitely lock in George Kittle, having a fantastic year. Big year, and he's going up against the Dallas Cowboys. He scored, I believe last year he had 4 catches for 3 touchdowns in this matchup, or 3 catches for 3 touchdowns. Kind of really weird fantasy football line. But without the weapons over there, you definitely have to trust George Kittle in your lineup. Dylan Fink, what's up? Full PPR, different leagues, start 2 flex. Bateman, Adunze, Shakir, Olave. I like um I like Bateman. We saw a little bit of the consistency earlier in the show. Looking through some of those stats, definitely like his safety there. I would not go with Chris Olave, as tempting as it might be. Do not love having Spencer Rattler over there. Don't love going up against the Chargers defense, who that team just wants to control the clock. You saw it last week. None of the weapons really had a good game outside of James Conner for the Arizona Cardinals. So I don't love the Olave play, but I do like it over the other two options. So if you have another pivot, feel free to share in the chat. But otherwise, then I would probably say Olave. Start one flex, one tight end. Javonte Williams or Rashad Bateman. I would go Rashad. Actually, no, I'd go Javonte in that spot. Coming off a big week last week, and going up in a game where they're a 10-point favorite, which is tremendous. I would definitely go with Javonte Williams. And then Cole Kmet or Zach Ertz, I'd go with Cole Kmet. He's been really, really solid. And he winded up on a lot of waiver wires after this week, which kind of surprises me. But I do like Cole Kmet on the course of the season. I like him on that Bears offense. From John Caldwell, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, 6-point passing and rushing. I'd go Jared Goff. I mean, this team, I do like Jared Goff. I think I don't love him in the matchup. I do have him on the all bus team, but I really don't think Russell Wilson's that great. And 6-point per passing touchdown, Jared Goff definitely gets a lot more upside. This is a team that is good against the run, so they could have to lean on the pass in it. So I would go with Jared Goff. I'd be pretty comfortable starting him over Russ. And then Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, 4-point passing, 6-point rushing. So Kyler has Miami. Miami's actually the best team against the quarterback position. I do think that they're going to struggle with his mobility a little bit. So that could be a little bit of upside. But I would actually probably lean Russell Wilson in that one. But I do think I mean Kyler Murray's been great. So you could go either way in that one. But I don't love the Miami matchup. Miami's just been so solid to that possession. Mark Andrews or Tucker Kraft, full PPR. Mark Andrews has been sneakily working his way up the board again. He's actually, after the 2 goose egg weeks in a year where it's been lackluster in his workload, Mark Andrews is the tight end 11 on the year, just so you know. From week 5 to week 7, Mark Andrews is the tight end 3. So he has picked it up tremendously over the last few games. You cannot bench Mark Andrews anymore off of those numbers, just to let you know. So I would definitely roll with Mark Andrews. All right, guys, real quick, we'll do a few more quick shameless plugs for those of you that are just joining us. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you're over on Facebook, Instagram, make sure, I would highly recommend coming over to YouTube. I can see your comments like this. I can pull them up on the screen. Definitely will answer every single question that pops through. Like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. Hit the notification bell so you could join us for our Sunday lives every single 8:30. Don't have my host here, other Nick, but I would definitely be. I will definitely be here to hold down the fort whenever he is not. All right, let's get back into some of these games. So, first matchup from the 1:00 slate: Philadelphia Eagles at the Cincinnati Bengals. Huge game. Should be a fun game. Cincinnati favored by 2.5, 47.5. Over under should be a high scoring game. The Eagles offense has not been as great or as consistent for fantasy, as I should say. This should be a really fun matchup. Cincinnati tends to step up for their bigger games and step back for their worse ones. We saw their 3 biggest games of the year and their 3 best fantasy games of the year come up against the Chiefs, the Ravens, and I forget the third one, but it's all been the high stake, high reward games, and their worst games have been, the Giants, the Panthers, the Patriots. So the Eagles are definitely better than those 3 teams, so expect a big day from the Bengals. From Scott Green, full PPR, Kyle Pitts or Tucker Kraft. I will go with Kyle Pitts in that one. Kyle Pitts has kind of ramped up his season too. He's been a lot more consistent. Last 3 weeks, 15.8, 10, 13.5. 3 straight double-digit weeks for him. We desperately hope he could keep that up. And I'm pretty sure week 5, his 15.8, which is the season high, was also up against the Buccaneers in this spot. So that's definitely something good to keep note of. All right, game number 2, 1 o'clock slate. Baltimore Ravens versus the Cleveland Browns. That is a big division matchup. We see the return of Jameis Winston. We get to watch that Browns offense. New offensive coordinator Nick Chubb getting worked in there. There's a lot of changes over there. No Amari Cooper. We're going to see Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. A lot of questions on this team. Highly recommend if you have the roster spot or someone that you think you're going to drop out to this week and they are on your waiver wire, go add one of them because that is huge upside on your bench for later on in the year. If I stack, from John Caldwell, if I stack Russell Wilson and George Pickens, pick my other 2 receivers, Drake London, Jaden Reed, Malik Neighbors. Great question. I would prefer to bench George Pickens of the 3 of these. If you are set on playing George Pickens, you have to put Drake London out there. And Jaden Reed has just been huge. Malik Neighbors has been huge. I did see a great stat that Jaden Reed's worst fantasy games come against man coverage. And in this matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Jags run more man coverage than any team in football. But the Jags are the worst team against the wide receiver position in football. So definitely tale of 2 tapes there. I would go with Drake London and Jaden Reed in that spot. Scott Green, of course, answering question, or Stanley answering for Scott Green. We'd love to see the communication in the chat. From J Main, needs to start 2 running backs, Rashad White, Tony Pollard, and then Javonte Williams. I'd go Rashad White and Javonte Williams. 2 of them coming off very good games. Tony Pollard going up against one of the toughest front sevens in football in the Detroit Lions. I do not like that matchup. And speaking of Tony Pollard, Tennessee Titans at the Detroit Lions. I like this should be a fun one for you Lions fans, not a fun one for you Titans fans. We might see Calvin Ridley on the move after this one. I don't think the Titans have kind of stood firm that they don't want to be sellers, but they're kind of one of the teams that need to be sellers because that defense has so many pieces that could get moved. If I were them, I'd be going all in on next year. I'd be trying to get those first round picks, second round picks, especially with how strong the draft class is for this year. But anyway, as a fantasy show, we'll get into the fantasy stuff. The Detroit Lions coming with a very big opportunity to kind of blow this team out, put up a ton of fantasy points in this one. So we'll roll with our Lions and we'll expect all the big guys to have their big games. Titans very good against the run, but we watched the Lions last week absolutely smoke the Vikings, who have been elite against the running back position. So we'll see it on that side. On the Titan side of things, we really do not want to see that front seven from the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions front seven has shut down pretty much every running back this year. So Tony Pollard definitely got to wind up on the bench. From Nick Jacoby, Nick Cap killing it. Thanks for the support, guys. Nick, of course, we wish you could join us today. No worries about not. We'll see you next week. But don't worry, we will hold the fort down in the meantime. All right, next game, probably the most important thing to note on the week. Tua Tagovailoa returning, the Miami Dolphins offense, hopefully coming all the way back. There has been no player that I've seen in my life get hurt that was like a fringe quarterback, like a player that we were not sure was how great they were. And we had it answered in the time that they were hurt. The Miami Dolphins offense with the Kyle Shanahan system, the system that is QB proof, could not execute with top superstars at all levels of their offense. And it looks like Tua is a much better quarterback than anyone gave him credit for. So we'll see if that actually holds true. But Tyreek Hill, I know that there were concerns about him playing. It's leaning towards him being in this game, which is huge. We definitely want to see him out there. I know that there's some injury concern there. But if Tyreek Hill is in, if Jalen Waddle will be in, Devon Achane, those are 3 guys that need to be started, and you need to set the expectations high in this matchup. Arizona coming off a short week, has to travel from LA to Miami or Arizona to Miami. I forget which one they flew from. Either way, 4 or 5 hour flight. It is a perfect opportunity for the Miami Dolphins to cook them in this game. There's absolutely no reason that the Dolphins shouldn't have a massive, massive comeback game from Tua and those guys. I own Tyreek Hill, I own Jalen Waddle, I own Devon Achane, I own Mostert. So I'm so invested in them getting back on track. This is the game to do it. Yeah, John Caldwell, Tyreek, everybody loved him going into the year, including myself. We love him every year near the top of the draft, and the Tua injury has definitely killed us. He had a good game, I believe, in week 1. Week 2 was pretty solid, and he's been benchable every week ever since. Next game on the slate, my most important game of the week, but one of the least fun for fantasy, the New York Jets at the New England Patriots. Jets have struggled in Foxborough for a very long time. I hope that doesn't continue. 7-point favorites in this matchup. We're going to see Garrett Wilson continue. We're going to see Garrett Wilson and Devontae get to play together against a soft defense. And I'm not saying it. Gerard Mayo, their head coach of the New England Patriots, is saying it. So we're going to watch the Jets have their opportunity to get right before they go. I believe they're on the short week this week, but we'll see. I don't remember the week 9 schedule. They might have. I feel like they have the Texans next week, but I could be wrong on that. Maybe they're on bye and then play the Texans. Let's see. Nope. Thursday Night Football. The Jets get the Texans. So short week for them, of course. Gotta love when that happens. But listen, it's a very big matchup for fantasy football. I still want to see what that New England Patriots offense looks like. They had to pull Demario Douglas because I believe he was sick or he got hurt in the game, so we didn't get to see much of him playing. But it is what it is. We want to watch these two teams, and we definitely need the Jets. We need to see what that wide receiver room still looks like. I think Devontae is going to find his way into the end zone, so we'll take a look there. But we just got to see when it happens. Scott Green, good idea to pick up Dalvin Cook and stash him or leave it alone. I don't think he's going to play well against the 49ers if they do play him at all. He has been on the roster for a very long time, and they just activated him. That's definitely a concern of mine that he has not gotten any playing time. I don't know if he's someone I want to stash, but while I also say that, I do also think if he gets, 12 touches for 48 yards and finds a touchdown, like he's going to be a top waiver guy. So who's the bottom few guys on your bench? Maybe I'll tell you someone to drop for him, but I'm not rushing to pick up Dalvin Cook. I don't think you need to, especially because this team always struggles to run the ball against the 49ers. From Emil, need one for the flex. Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Sterling Shepard, Josh Palmer. Thank you. No, thank you. And I would go with Cedric Tillman. We saw the workload last week with Jameis Winston without Deshaun Watson. I do have Cedric Tillman as the guy that I want to stash if I'm in a deeper league, because I do think he's going to be a top guy for your waiver wire. This past week, with no Amari Cooper, he had 12 targets, 8 catches, 81 yards. He also gets the Baltimore Ravens, who allow the most points to the wide receiver position. And you get Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston's been great for fantasy. We watched Chris Olave's first 2 games of his career have very great seasons. We also watched other guys have very fantasy relevant seasons with Jameis at the helm. Mike Evans, 5,000-yard seasons with him. Godwin, multiple top 12 finishes. Adam Humphries, I don't know if anybody remembers Adam Humphries, very mid receiver, but did have multiple very solid seasons with Jameis. And then Deshaun Jackson had a couple 1,000-yard seasons with him. So Jameis Winston knows how to get the ball to his guys, and there is a new play caller in the area for this week, which is interesting. But this matchup against the Ravens is pretty solid. So let's get over to the next game. I see some of you guys communicating in the chat. Go for it. Do your thing. Definitely feel free to help each other out. So let's go. Atlanta at Tampa. We saw this matchup once before. Atlanta favored by 2.5. I'm sure a lot of people think that that's a little low considering they beat them last time in overtime with a touchdown. with no Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Weird line, 45.5 over under. This game has a shot to hit the over, but I'm definitely concerned. My big question for the game is, how does Baker look without all of his weapons? We always talk about it with Purdy. How does Purdy look without Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, CMC? We call them the Avengers. How does he look without some of the Avengers? And Purdy's looked pretty solid this year. Last week was not great. I'm sure they get right against Dallas, but we'll see that when it unfolds. But we want to see what Baker Mayfield looks like without his superstars. He's missing his top two guys. I imagine they do lean on Rachaad White a little bit more in this one, especially in the passing game. But those receivers have all been super picked up between Shepard and McMillan. I believe there's a third one that I'm missing, but those three have definitely been big pickups for your waiver wire. So those are guys that are definitely good to roster as well. From Scott Green, Nick, I have Warren and Jennings on bench. So this is in regards to stashing Dalvin Cook. I would rather keep Warren and Jennings. I don't. If you're gonna cut one, it would be Warren. But I feel like Warren has a better shot to be fantasy relevant than Dalvin Cook. I do think that that running back room has opportunity to break through, but I do think Rico Dowdle is kind of, I don't want to say head and shoulders above everyone, but head above everybody, right? Like his eyes are just peeking above him at the moment, and it does feel like they've been trending more towards him being the guy. From J-Main, got QB problems, Baker or Kyler? I would go with Kyler in this spot. I do want to see Baker Mayfield perform without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin before I'm going to comfortably start him in my lineup. Although I do like the matchup for him. He did play very well the last time they played, 3 touchdowns, 200 yards. He's having a tremendous year. I believe he's number 2 in the league in passing touchdowns. So Baker's had a great year, but I mean, almost any quarterback. Look at Mahomes. Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. We watch him lose Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice, and all of a sudden he's not fantasy startable. I mean, it just happens for quarterbacks. They still win their games. They still get that done, but they're not really doing it. Picked up McMillan. You're missing on Palmer, and then of course Kate Otten. Yep, 100%. So I like McMillan this week. He's one of my starts of the week. From Raina, Amari Cooper, Jaden Reed, or Bigsby in the flex. I would go Amari Cooper in the spot. He's definitely going to get worked in a lot more. That Buffalo offense should be rolling. Josh Allen, 14 touchdowns, 0 interceptions this year, having one hell of a season from him. So I love Amari Cooper rest of the season. I think he's a good trade for. If he has a bad week, I would be all over trying to get him. But to me, he's definitely the start of the week. I don't mind the Reed play. I don't mind the Bigsby play. But I think Amari Cooper, head and shoulders above the other two, has the most upside. I know Jaden Reed has had the 2 big games this season, so he does have the upside. But I think Amari Cooper, in terms of workload, touchdowns, yards, he can check all 3 of those boxes better than some of the other guys can. And then last question that we have here in the queue, feel free to send some more in, guys. Travis Kelce or Pat Freiermuth? I would go with Travis Kelce. Russell Wilson has never in his career targeted the tight end much. We've never seen a great fantasy season from any of the tight end position guys. So I would rather lean on Kelce. Kelce has had obviously not benefit, but with the other receivers going down, he's definitely going to get worked in more. We know we see DeAndre Hopkins this week, but they did trade for him a little bit later in the week. Amari Cooper only ran like 12 routes with the Buffalo Bills, and it was 36% snap share, and he got traded at the start of the week. So I imagine that the Chiefs spend a little bit more time working him in, and it still will be the Travis Kelce show, or an attempt at the Travis Kelce show in that spot. All right, next game, Green Bay Packers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Green Bay favored by 4 points, 49.5 over under. This should be a very good fantasy game, but will probably not be a game that you guys want to watch or pay very close attention to in this one. So I like the Green Bay guys. The Jaden Reed, the one stat I will give you is that the one thing he has struggled with the most this season is man coverage, and the Jacksonville Jaguars run more man coverage than any team in football. So I'm not saying bench Jaden Reed at all because he is definitely more talented than that secondary, But I'm telling you, if he has a bad game, it is because of the scheme. So I will tell you in advance, do not freak out if Jaden Reed has a bad game. And I do not mind you benching him for other options, but it's very hard to say, oh, Jacksonville is one of the worst secondaries in football. How do I not play the wide receiver one on one of the best offenses for football? So not going to fight you on that one. So I have David Montgomery. Is he safe to play with Jahmyr Gibbs blowing it up? Yes, absolutely. David Montgomery got dinged up last week. He missed a little bit of time in the game, which is why you saw Gibbs get that much more workload. They were up big for a portion of it, and they said, let's just keep leaning on Jahmyr Gibbs. If he is a little dinged up, they probably do pivot to Gibbs a lot more than you want to see. But we watched David Montgomery have 15-plus points in every game up until last week with Jahmyr Gibbs playing. It is absolutely safe to play him. If you're concerned, it's mostly going to be because the matchup. The Tennessee Titans are very good against the running back position. And last week, they played the Vikings, who are good against the running back position. And Gibbs, who is the better back, had the more explosive week. But we've seen enough consistency from David Montgomery to trust him every week at this point. I'm not too concerned. So, got 2 flex spots, 2 wide receivers. Adams, JSN, London, McBride, McMillan, Pollard. Picked up Ridley this morning, too. So is your question to play 2 receivers and 2 flex spots? If I'm going that way, I want Devontae Adams and Drake London would be my 1 and 2. And my flex is I probably lean JSN and Jalen McMillan. We didn't get to the Seahawks matchup yet against Buffalo. I like that opportunity for him, though. Just looking through from Jeff Rogers. Quick question, 1 for the flex. Full PPR, Bigsby, Dobbs, Hopkins, and Lockett. I'd probably go with Romeo Dobbs in that spot. I mentioned the man-to-man coverage stats and how they're not good for Jaden Reed. Romeo Dobbs is very good against man coverage, and this is a bad secondary. So Romeo Dobbs, honestly, if I found out about those stats a little bit earlier in the week, would have winded up on my all-boom team. I guess I could plug him in because Juwan Jennings is not playing. So that might be a good opportunity for me. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a very good spot this week. I would definitely go with Romeo Dobbs. All right, next game on the slate, last game of the 1 o'clock spot. We have the Indianapolis Colts going up against the Houston Texans. The Colts, a very, very interesting team, to say the least. We've watched this matchup happen already once earlier in the year. In this matchup, we did see the Colts team struggle on offense, but Anthony Richardson did have his best game, but it came with 9 completions. It is a very, very strange game with how everything went. But Anthony Richardson is trending more towards USFL than he is towards NFL at the moment. I do not like Michael Pittman. We saw the inconsistencies pretty much every single week with Anthony Richardson throwing in the ball. He just does not get heavily targeted enough. And then on the Houston side of things, their concerns after they had a very bad game last week. I'm not concerned. I mean, CJ Stroud has had these boys rolling all year, pretty much his entire career. He's had a great young career so far. And I'm not overly concerned about a game where I told you before the game, he does not travel well. He does not play well on the road. It's kind of been one of these stats people really aren't talking about, but is out there. He's averaging 211 yards per game on the road. He's averaging 214 yards per game on the road, 311 yards at home. He's averaging 1 more touchdown per game. So definitely an interesting one for sure. All right, getting back to the questions. Charlie Green, defense question. We like in some of those. Steelers defense against the Giants, Green Bay defense against the Jaguars. I would go with the Steelers defense in that one. Giants offense, really, really rough. Mike Tomlin, very, very solid defensive coach, obviously, and the Giants offense has been horrible. The big differentiator for me with defense, if there's 2 good defenses, is looking at the over-unders on the game. The Steelers-Giants is at 36.5. It is the only game this week under a 40 over-under. So that's important to note. The Steelers also favored by 6. The implied point total in this game is that the Steelers win, I believe it's 21-15. So They are saying the New York Giants are going to be awful this week, which I think is very possible. And then you look at the Green Bay game, and they are in the highest over under the week at 49.5. So they're predicting that both these teams have big games against one another. I would rather go with the Steelers defense in this one. Okay, no problem, Jamie. So right back to your question. We'll pull it back up for you. One receiver and two flex. So the one receiver is Drake London, and then the number two would be Devontae Adams, and then JSN for me. Sorry, we got these bots coming in the chat trying to promote their link, so we got to get rid of these people. So next up question. All right, Jeff Rodgers, Steelers defense or Chiefs defense. You could go either way. I would go with the Steelers defense. I like the Chiefs defense. I am playing them in multiple leagues. I do not have the Steelers defense anywhere, but I would play the Steelers. The only reason I'd be concerned is division matchups get wonky. It sucks. It happens, but in a division matchup, I don't really like it. I don't like the division matchup for top defenses as much as I do the AFC, NFC style. They don't see each other as often. They're not as well game prepped and prepared. So I would go with the Steelers defense over the Chiefs, but you can definitely go either way in that one. John Colwell, Steelers D, everybody, coming off a week with 2 picks and no TJ sack. TJ again, too. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the Steelers defense is clearly one of the top 5 in football. I have no problem starting them most weeks, especially against weaker offenses. And a resident Steeler fan. All right, good to know. Thanks a lot, John Colwell. Really had to destroy my confidence last week with my boys, but that's all right. You got to do what you got to do. All right, 4 o'clock slate. Let's get into it. New Orleans Saints at the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, what a corner game. Not because these teams are boring, but because these teams are really boring and for totally different reasons. The Chargers want to play that old school style football. All they care about is running it down your throat and retaining possession, and they do it better than most teams. No questions asked. New Orleans Saints, not a very good team. I've never seen a team look so great through 2 weeks and then just totally flip the switch. I think Dennis Allen is getting canned at some point soon. It's got to happen. I mean, this team has, and granted, health has not been on their side. I've never seen a flip like this. I mean, really, really bad from these guys. And now you get the Chargers going up against one of the worst defenses in football. The Saints have been the worst since week 3 in the league. So definitely concerns on that side. If you want to play your options, I mean, you play your Kamara, you can play Olave, although I don't love it. And then on the Chargers side, J.K. Dobbins, very solid start in most of these games. Justin Herbert, you do not want to play in this matchup, but he's upticking his fantasy stats. They need another wide receiver for sure. From Stanley, Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes. I agree with Joe here. I have no idea how you got both on your team. I mean, you should definitely be trying to trade away one of them. I would go with Jalen Hurts pretty much every week over Patrick Mahomes at this point. Next game, 4 o'clock slate. Just got a few more to get through, and we'll still prioritize your questions real quick before I get into the Buffalo and Seattle game. You guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube. If you're on Instagram, Facebook, definitely swing over to YouTube to watch the live stream. It is way better here where we can pull up your questions and your comments like this, and we can answer it in live time. Unfortunately, there is an issue with the compatibility from the other 2 platforms where we cannot get the feed up and over here. So definitely want to make sure you tune in on the YouTube channel. That is Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast. All right, next game up, Buffalo Bills at the Seattle Seahawks. A big travel game, Buffalo flying from the Northeast all the way out to the Northwest. The travel schedule is not fun for teams. It is not good. Buffalo -3 points on the road there. If I think that the Seahawks could definitely upset them in this spot. This feels like one of those games where you look over your opponent, especially on the big travel spot. I want to take a look at Buffalo's schedule real quick. So Buffalo gets Miami next at home. They are definitely going to be overlooking this game against Seattle. No question in my mind. So I love my Seahawks in this spot for sure. You like your JSN, your Kenneth Walker, your DK Metcalf. Although I do think DK is doubtful in this one. So definitely concerns on that side of it. And then on the other side, Buffalo, we know what to do. We know we play Josh Allen. We know we play James Cook. You can throw Dalton Kincaid out there and Amari Cooper. I don't think anyone else in that lineup is a lock at this point. When Amari Cooper gets filtered more into this system, we are going to see who is the weakling, who is the guy that gets pulled on the snap share. I do fear it's going to be Shakir, even though Shakir has been the best receiver of the group so far. But I do think that they're going to roll with big Keon Coleman and huge Matt Collins on the outside and put Amari Cooper on the inside. Schematically, it makes a lot more sense. And then Khalil Shakir will be in on some of those like 2 wide receiver sets where it's a lot closer to the line of scrimmage or a lot closer to the huddle. Jeff Rogers have Cade Otton and Hawkinson when Hawk comes back. Should I keep both and play matchups or drop one? If so, which one? You definitely do not drop TJ Hawkinson. You can drop Cade Otton if you want. If there's a better tight end play, you definitely want to see Hawkinson perform first, right? He's coming off a major injury that he got at the end of last year, finally healthy. You definitely need to see him out there for two. I would say if his first game back is great, you're good. If his first 2 games back he struggles, people are going to want to drop him. I would not rush to do that personally. I memean, you drafted him, you kept him on your roster through 8 weeks. The earliest he could start is week 9. I'm not fearing it. I mean, it just is the way that it is, and you kind of got to roll out with it. All right, a few more games here. Carolina at Denver. We're not going to spend too much time talking about this. Denver, 11-point favorite, biggest favorite on the week, biggest favorite in any game on the year outside of, actually, there is one more favorite. Detroit minus 12.5 this week against the Tennessee Titans. That's the one game that has a bigger favorite. Denver's been rolling, going up against Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. No Deontay Johnson, no Adam Thielen, no Andy Dalton. Horrible spot for these guys. I would definitely be all out if I'm a Panthers fan on this one. I would not play a single Panther in this matchup. Denver, I don't really like playing anyone, but Javonte did have his best game of the week. So I guess I would roll with Javonte. All right, guys, keep making sure you drop those questions. We're going to get through the last 4 games of the slate. Make sure you get to them as soon as you can. Once we get through those 4 games and all your questions, we are going to head out of here. I know a little bit earlier than usual, but when you got the solo show and you get through the games, kind of hard to keep the momentum going after that. So if you guys got questions, make sure you drop them real quick. We got, I don't even know how to say that name, but we're just going to call you B for now. So B, you like Tua or Goff this week? I would go with Tua in a big comeback spot. Arizona on the short week, flying from the southwest to the southeast. Very long flight. Jared Goff going up against the Tennessee Titans, a team that has had one of the best defenses in football, actually. Makes no sense why they can't win games outside of Will Levis, obviously. But if I'm in this spot, I do not want to play Jared Goff if I have a good pivot like Tua, and Tua's been pretty solid in some of the other games for sure. So one of the last 4 games we got, Kansas City at the Las Vegas Raiders. Kansas City 9.5-point favorite in this one. Definitely like the opportunity there for Kansas City. They lost the last time these 2 teams faced, believe it or not. Back, I believe it was Christmas last year. We saw the Kermit the Frog thing. We saw the Antonio Pierce saying it. We saw Antonio Pierce saying things like, "We have the recipe to beat the Kansas City Chiefs." No, you don't. All right, Antonio, let's calm down here. All right. So I do not trust Antonio Pierce in this spot. I think your Kansas City Chiefs cook. The big question, DeAndre Hopkins. I think you're going to see a lot of what you saw with Amari Cooper in Buffalo. They're going to want to get him the touchdown because it feels good to get the new guy the touchdown, but you are going to see a limited workload. He got traded a little bit later into the week. Amari Cooper saw a 36% snap share in that first matchup, in that first game you're probably going to see something similar. I would guess less than 50% for DeAndre Hopkins as he still continues to learn the playbook for this one. All right, guys, we got a few questions here. First up, Mark, drop JMO to pick up Troy Franklin, or JMO still worth the hold? Yeah, I definitely hold Jameson Williams. He's having a great year. Yes, it's due to PEDs. This is the second time, I believe, in his career he got suspended for it, which is interesting and a different problem. But Jameson Williams, he's been so good when he's been out there. Troy Franklin, not a bad hold on your roster, but I don't really trust any Denver receiver at this point. So maybe he separates himself from the rest of the herd before the end of the year. But I would personally lean a little bit more on Jameson Williams and how great he has been. From Jacob, if Higgins misses, would you replace him with Rachaad White, Jalen Tolbert, or Austin Eckler? It would be Rachaad White. He was the RB2 last week. He's going up against in what is projected to be a high-scoring game against the Atlanta Falcons. With no Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, you have to imagine Rachaad White gets leaned on a little bit more in the passing game. And that's where he's had his PPR success. So I would definitely lean on Rachaad White in that one. Bucky or Tucker in the flex. If you have to play one of the two, I'd play Bucky Irving over Tucker. Tucker had the big game 2 weeks ago. Bucky had a good game 2 weeks ago, but Bucky is the running back from this group that I think is the best of the three, the three-headed monster. So we'll see, but I think Bucky is the best play between the two of them. From Jason, start one, Tony Pollard, Michael Pittman, or Jalen McMillan. This is a good one. I would go with Jalen McMillan. Tony Pollard's been the most consistent, but the Lions have shut down everybody as a team, and I believe Nick also had them on the all-bus team, my co-host Nick, that is. So I would totally not play Pollard in this matchup. Michael Pittman, we saw it with Anthony Richardson. He just does not target Pittman enough to be consistent enough. This game already happened in week 1, and Pittman saw very few targets. Richardson only had 9 completions in the game, so not great. And Jalen McMillan's going to have a big role. He's got the biggest upside of any of those Tampa Bay receivers, being a young player with a, Baker's been very solid this year. Everything kind of lines up for Jalen McMillan to be really good. How valuable do you think Chris Godwin will be next year? Have him in Dynasty? This is a great question. We'll see how I need to see how the rest of the season plays out with the Buccaneers offense before I could say that. Maybe even just 1 week. If they have McMillan, who is a young receiver, Godwin's been in the league for a long time. He was drafted in 2017. So he's got quite a few years under his belt. And the injury he's done for the year will probably be ready for next year. I don't know. I feel like I don't think they trade him, but you got a veteran receiver who's coming off a great year. I feel like that they could definitely pivot a lot more than people would expect. I don't know how much value he would really retain in Dynasty right now. I know you're in our league with 8 keepers. I don't remember your roster. We could offline about it, but I don't know if I would trust keeping him. Jason Ortiz, start 2, Cortland Sutton, Michael Pittman, Jalen McMillan. I'm going McMillan and Sutton. I like that Carolina matchup for Sutton, and I like McMillan's upside. I've been all over him pretty much the entire time, the entire week. I really want him everywhere I could get him. John Caldwell, best tight end streamer questions. And then he said, likely's in your lineup, Taysom Hill on the waiver wire. I like Taysom Hill. I mean, I'm going to say it every week because I'm a big Taysom Hill guy. Who else do you have on the waivers? I could give you another option from your list. But especially with Derek Carr not playing, as long as it's Spencer Rattler, once Taysom Hill gets in there, he is going to get some QB reps because that's just the way they do it with him. So if Taysom's out there and you're not confident in your tight end, that is a great pivot. That is a great pivot for you. PBR flex, start Neighbors against Pittsburgh or Mason against Dallas. I would go with Mason in this one. His over-under yards line is 80.5. I believe he has the second most rushing yards in football. Dallas horrendous against the running back position. everybody has kind of torched them. I would be all over Jordan Mason in this one. Or Wan'Dale Robinson is an option from the start too. If you can start two, it's Neighbors and Mason. If you can only start one, it's Mason for me. Okay, sorry guys, we got a few in here. So Sam Russell, I dropped Mahomes. Top 3 ads are Kyler, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams. Who do I add? Well, I wouldn't have dropped Mahomes if there was other guys you could have added. Kyler has the best season outlook, safest floor every week, but Caleb Williams is the fun one to play. I'll be honest. He's having a great season. He's picked it up a lot on the back half, or not the back half, but the last few weeks. He has picked it up since his rough debut. But you got to keep in mind he's a rookie and he's being compared to Jaden Daniels, who's having statistically one of the best rookie seasons we have ever seen from a quarterback. So, I mean, Caleb Williams to me, of the next bunch, is the one I want to roster. I don't mind Kyler Murray. I would have traded Mahomes. Someone still wants to buy low on him, and we'll see how it looks with DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, he could go out this week and throw a 5-touchdown game. No one would be surprised, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it looks like he wasn't gone after all. Need 2, Scary Terry, JSN, Marvin Harrison Jr., Tank Dell. I would go with Tank Dell and JSN in this one. Tank Dell has been really solid. Bad game last week, but I gave all the stats a lot earlier. This is the Houston Texans do not travel well. CJ Stroud does not travel well, especially up north. Worst game of the year there. And Tank Dell's been very solid every game without Nico Collins there. So I'm definitely good with that one. And then JSN, most likely no DK Metcalf against the Buffalo Bills, a team that has not been great against the wide receiver position. I like the matchup there. From Mike, Tua or Caleb Williams. I would go with Caleb Williams. Coming off the bye, Washington's defense is absolutely horrendous. I like Tua, but if I had to lean on one side, I would want to see him play 1 week. Even I trust playing Tua this week, but I do think Caleb Williams does have the better matchup regardless. And if there were a determining factor, it would be him coming off of an injury, and I do want to see what he looks like after 1 more week. From Jay, start Ferguson, Tillman, Bucky, or Leggett. I would start Cedric Tillman. Of this group, 12 targets last week. Jameis Winston, huge fantasy quarterback. We love him for fantasy. Cedric Tillman, eight catches, 81 yards, 12 targets. Love that for him in this opportunity. All right, no questions at the moment, so we will get to the next game. Chicago at Washington. A lot of questions coming in the last few minutes about Caleb Williams for sure. Love Caleb Williams for it. We definitely want to see Caleb out there and want to see him have a big game. We want to see Jaden Daniels out there because we really want to see this rookie matchup. This game really should have got flexed to Monday Night Football. Get the Giants and the Steelers out of there. Who wants to watch that in prime time? That is a perfect red zone game. You just need to catch it on the moments. Caleb and Jaden, we probably wanted to see every second of this matchup, and no one would have thought that before the year. Just thinking, you got to work through your rookie lulls and things, but this game should be huge. And I hope we do get to see Jaden Daniels. I think it's trending towards him not playing. Although the books are reflecting a line that suggests that Jaden is now playing, which is definitely interesting. So something to keep a monitor on. But I would still expect that the Chicago defense absolutely tortures them. If there is no Jaden Daniels in this matchup, I do not want to play a single player from the Washington side of things. I don't think Marcus Mariota will be able to sustain a great game like they had last week in a very easy matchup. This is a tough matchup, so don't love that one for them. And then on the Chicago side, coming off a bye, the big question is, what does this wide receiver room look like? We know DJ Moore should be locked in. Is it going to be Romo or is it going to be Keenan Allen? Both these guys have had some good games, some bad games the last few weeks. Keenan Allen was trending towards being that wide receiver too for the team and the red zone threat. So we'll see if that holds up. All right, guys, real quick, we're going to get into the 2 primetime games. Got to do one last plug before we get out of here. Make sure come over to YouTube if you're watching on one of the other platforms. It's the best place to watch. We can pull up your comments and your questions just like this, and we can answer it in real time. We cannot see it on the other platforms. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so every single Sunday at 8:30 you get a ding, and you know to stop by here to drop your start sit-em questions is the best place for it. Feel free to drop some more comments. If you guys also want, while we're here, feel free to drop a hot take for the week or for the season. I mean, I have no problem reacting to some things too. So if you guys have something, maybe a football opinion that you have that's controversial and you want the real-time reaction, like go for it. Go ahead. We'll have some fun here. Why not? Let's just keep up to it. But in the meantime, let's get to your Sunday night football matchup. The Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers historically absolutely trampled the Dallas Cowboys coming off of a bye. Both these teams have not looked nearly as good as they have the last 2, 3, 4 years. San Fran, big favorite in this one at 5 points. And it's in San Francisco. I am definitely concerned if I am a Dallas Cowboys fan about this matchup, as you should have been every single year. So listen, we need to see what this running back looks like. I definitely want to see what they do with Dalvin Cook. I don't think he's really going to be a threat personally because he has been on the roster for so long. But we'll see. And we need CeeDee Lamb to get it right. Up to this point last year in the season, CeeDee Lamb was outside the top 15 wide receivers, and then he finished the year as the wide receiver 1 on the year. So I do think CeeDee has some good trade for upside, which is definitely interesting and definitely something to monitor. On the San Fran side, man, they are missing so many weapons. Deebo Samuel has played 2 games without Brandon Ayuk. In both those games, he had 24 and 25. So if Deebo's out there, he is poised for a big game in this spot. Definitely want to see that one. Don't have too many questions. I think this should just be a fun football game to watch in primetime, to be honest. And it'll be fun to mock either one of these teams. Both of them are really hated by the general fan bases, especially the Cowboys, obviously. But no one likes watching the 49ers and just how great that roster is, let's be honest. Every single week trample teams, but we don't mind them trampling the Cowboys. So either way, it's going to be a good meme afterwards. Real quick, all right, we got 2 Steelers things here. So Pickens' stock is up. He has touchdown upside now. Yeah, I don't mind that opinion. I mean, I do think Justin Fields did have that offense starting to roll in the last couple weeks. At least points-wise, they were up from the start of the year. I didn't agree with the decision to start Russell Wilson, but obviously, in hindsight, he looks pretty good. I think his numbers looked a lot better than I thought he looked last week, although he was going up against a top Jets defense. So who might have talked? They did score 30 and answered off the Rodgers interceptions. I'm not going to judge too much. I want to see, but I definitely want to see him do it a little bit longer. This is a sneaky revenge spot for him too, going up against the Giants, a team that he really wanted to go to that said, nah, Daniel Jones is better than you. So I would love to watch Russell Wilson step up and step on their throats this week. I think that'd be a lot of fun. What's going on with Roman Wilson? And then from John, Wilson's a bust at this point. Dude can't stay healthy. Yeah, no, health's definitely been an issue. I was all over Roman Wilson in the offseason just because the Steelers historically have drafted so many fantasy relevant wide receivers. And I'm still going to continue that model because between Pickens' rookie year, Deontay Johnson when he was younger, Chase Claypool's rookie year, Juju, Antonio Brown, James Washington. Like, there's been so many Steelers formidable to like really good wide receivers, at least for fantasy, where you can't avoid taking the rookie in the draft. So I liked Roman Wilson, but I agree with John. If you're not staying healthy, you're not staying on my roster, or you got to sit on the IR all year. And if there's someone better, it's time to hit the road. So maybe he turns it around when he can get out on the field, but we haven't seen anything yet to prove it to us. Hold on. All right, Arena. Kirk Cousins or Kyler Murray. I would go with Kirk Cousins. We watched him throw for 500 yards in this matchup just a couple weeks ago. I don't think he does that again, but I do think he should be poised to have another very solid game. John, Russ needs more options on the field, but as Tomlin says, hard to jump on a moving train. Yeah, no, that's a good point. They're winning games and they're winning big, right? Like, I believe they scored over 30 in the last 2 games. They're not my team, so I'm not paying attention to them too much, but I know they have the primetime game. And now they play the Giants this week. So listen, they're winning games. Tomlin has also always said he'll never let a starter lose their job to injury. So, I definitely Tomlin's always said you're not going to lose your job if you're injured, right? So they had to give Russ the job with that mantra, even though they were 4-2 in the winning category. So I can't really blame them for that one, but I personally still think that Justin Fields is the better quarterback. It made more sense to play just because he is younger. You want to know if you're going to have him for next year. Russ hadn't played at any point. But what can I say? They proved me wrong last week. So I definitely want to see a few more weeks of it for sure. And then last game, since we've talked so much Steelers in the last 5-10 minutes, Giants at Steelers, lowest over under on the week. Giants, Steelers, defensive matchup. Don't love watching this on primetime, to be honest. But it kind of is what it is. I do think we got the Yankees game at the same time, so I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That might be on the other screen. But we'll peek at it. We need to see Malik Neighbors healthy and step back up. I do think there's a good shot that this is his last Daniel Jones' last start as a New York Giant. So that'll be interesting. They did pivot to Drew Lock last week. They did announce Daniel Jones as the starter this week. I would love to see Drew Lock in there. I think he's not a great quarterback, obviously, but he's a little bit more fun to watch. A lot more fun guy too, which is always good for football. So that's it for the week matchups. We are going to close out soon, but we do got one more question here. We're going to get through any questions, so make sure you drop them. Any hot takes, anything you guys want to share before we get out of here. Real quick from John Daly. Need one. Rachaad White, Darnell Mooney, JSN, Chase Brown, PPR. I am dying over here. Please help. Happy to help, but you're not dying. I mean, you got some great options here. You can go with Rachaad White, Mooney, or Smith, or JSN. Any of those three are fine. I have Darnell Mooney on the all boom team, so let me give you the opinion for him real quick. I would go Mooney or JSN. I'm fine with either or. JSN definitely belongs in a roster spot without DK there this week. But real quick, Darnell Mooney, last time he played Tampa Bay, a couple weeks ago, Mooney was the wide receiver 3 on the week, 16 targets, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was the game where Kirk Cousins had 500 yards. I am not saying he is going to do that again because that's a stretch. But what I am saying is we've seen him have a huge game against this team, so you kind of have to play him. When you've seen it before, you just got to repeat it. It's a big thing for fantasy football. If you're in a division matchup and you get 2 matchups a year against this team, you got to see it once, and you can most likely copy and paste what worked. So Darnell Mooney, he had the big game last time. There's no reason not to expect him to have a good fantasy game this week. All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell. You know what to do at this point to support the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast. All social media platforms. You can see them in the scroll right down here. Nick and I will be back on Tuesday to give you our top 5 takeaways from the week. And then you'll either get an episode Thursday or Friday from us doing our all boom and all bust for week 9. So we'll get into that down the week, but make sure you support those shows. We give a lot more of our in-depth analysis there. Love to get you guys every Sunday with the all boom, or every Sunday with the live Q&A. So make sure you guys join. Appreciate everybody who tuned in this week. And we'll see you in the next one. But before we go, from my guy Joe, yes, our Yankees are coming back this year. And hopefully next Sunday I get to brag on the show. But my teams have not been historically great. Thanks, guys. Anyway, appreciate it. We will see you guys next week.